All right, let's try a little thought experiment. Picture your life right now. The routines, the relationships, the memories that make you, you. Think about your name, your face in the mirror, the stories you tell about your childhood. It all feels so solid, so permanent, doesn't it? It's the bedrock of who you are. Now imagine you're just going about your day. You're scrolling through your phone, half listening to a podcast, maybe stuck in traffic. It's all perfectly normal, perfectly mundane. And then a story cuts through the noise. A story so bizarre, so audacious, it forces you to question that very bedrock of identity I was just talking about. You hear about someone who didn't just tell a lie, but lived it. Someone who managed to pull off the ultimate, most profound act of deception imaginable. I'm not talking about a spy with a few clever aliases, or a con artist who fakes a name to cash a bad check. This is something else entirely. I'm talking about a person who didn't just borrow an identity for a day or a week. He inhabited them. He became them. He didn't just fake one or two, or even a dozen. No. This guy assumed over 500 different identities. Yeah, you heard that right. Let that number just sink in for a second. 500. That's not just a list of names. That's 500 life stories. 500 sets of parents, real or imagined. 500 birthdays. 500 fabricated pasts, each one detailed enough to be believed. For decades, he was a ghost in the system, a phantom who could be anyone, from anywhere. The sheer logistical and psychological effort is staggering to even comprehend. So, who is this master of disguise? This architect of hundreds of fictional lives? Let me introduce you to Frédéric Bourdin, a man law enforcement and the media would eventually nickname, quite fittingly, the Chameleon. The name is perfect, because like the reptile, Bourdin's survival depended on his ability to blend in, to change his colors to match his surroundings, to become utterly invisible by becoming someone else. To understand the man, you have to go back to the beginning. Bourdin was born in 1974 in Nanterre, a suburb of Paris. His childhood was anything but stable. He never knew his father, and his mother, who was very young, felt unable to care for him. So he was sent to live with his grandparents in a small village. From the very start, he felt like an outsider, a boy with no real roots, no clear identity. He was lonely, and he was desperate for the one thing he felt he never had: a loving family. This craving for affection, for a sense of belonging, would become the driving force behind his entire life. He started running away from home as a teenager, and it was then that he discovered his strange and powerful talent. He found that if he pretended to be a lost or abandoned child, people would take him in. They would give him food, shelter, and most importantly, attention and care. He traveled across Europe, honing his craft. He'd show up in a youth shelter in Spain, claiming to be a German tourist who'd been robbed. He'd appear in Italy, posing as a British runaway. Each time he was a new person, with a new tragic story. And each time, for a little while, he found the home he was looking for. His abilities were truly uncanny. He was a natural mimic. He could listen to a person speak for just a few minutes and absorb the rhythm, the cadence, the unique inflections of their accent. He could convincingly portray someone from almost any country in Europe, and eventually, even America. But the accent was just the surface layer. His real genius was in inventing backstories. He didn't just say, "I'm an orphan." He would craft an entire narrative, filled with heartbreaking specific details. He'd describe a fictional house, invent memories of a beloved pet, or recount a traumatic event with such raw emotion that no one would dare question it. He understood that the more specific the lie, the more believable it becomes. And to back it all up, he became a master forger. In an era before everything was digitized and cross-referenced, he could create passable documents, birth certificates, school IDs, passports. He knew just enough about bureaucracy to exploit its weaknesses. He was a one-man identity factory, able to produce a new person on demand. He had dozens of successful impersonations, fooling police, social workers, and entire communities across Europe. But his most audacious, most jaw-dropping con, the one that would make him infamous worldwide, took place in the late 1990s, and it didn't involve a fictional person. This time he decided to become someone real. In 1994, a 13-year-old boy named Nicholas Barkley disappeared from his home in San Antonio, Texas. He'd had an argument with his family and stormed out. He was never seen again. The family was devastated, left with a void of unanswered questions. 3 years later, in 1997, Frédéric Bourdin, now 23 years old, found himself in a youth home in Spain. His time was running out. The authorities were getting suspicious that he wasn't the young teenager he claimed to be. He needed an escape, a new identity, and he needed one fast. So he got on the phone. He called the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children in the United States, pretending to be an official from the youth home. He got them to fax him a list of missing children. As he scanned the list, one name stood out: Nicholas Barkley. The age was plausible enough if you stretched it, so Bourdin made his move. He told the Spanish authorities that he was, in fact, the missing American boy. Now let's be perfectly clear about how insane this was. Bourdin was a 23-year-old Frenchman with dark hair and brown eyes. Nicholas Barkley was a 16-year-old American with blonde hair and blue eyes. They looked nothing alike. And of course, Bourdin had a thick French accent. But that's where his genius for storytelling came in. He concocted a horrific tale. He claimed he'd been kidnapped from Texas by a shadowy international child trafficking ring. He said he'd been flown to Europe, abused for years, and forced to serve his captors. This trauma, he claimed, was why he looked different, why his eyes seemed to have changed color, and why he spoke with a strange accent. His captors had forbidden him from speaking English. It was a story designed to elicit pity and short-circuit logical thinking, and it worked. The U.S. Embassy was notified. Nicholas's family was contacted. His older sister Carrie was so overjoyed she didn't even wait for a DNA test. She flew to Spain to bring her long-lost brother home. You have to imagine her state of mind. After 3 years of grief and uncertainty, the person she loved most was seemingly back from the dead. Her hope was so powerful, it blinded her to the obvious. When she saw Bourdin, he was huddled in a corner, traumatized and scared, or so he acted. She embraced him, and in that moment, Frédéric Bourdin won. He was flown back to Texas and welcomed into the Barkley family home. For nearly 5 months, he lived as Nicholas Barkley. He enrolled in the local high school, a 23-year-old man, sitting in classes with teenagers, doing homework, going to parties. He lived in Nicholas's room, wore his clothes, and listened to stories about a childhood that wasn't his. The family, desperate to believe, explained away the inconsistencies. The trauma changed him, they said. He looks different, but it's him. We can feel it. But not everyone was convinced. A local private investigator named Charlie Parker was hired by a TV show that was covering the miraculous reunion. Parker was a no-nonsense Texan, and from the moment he saw a picture of the returned Nicholas, his gut told him something was wrong. He famously said, "The ears don't match." He started digging. He pulled old photos, compared facial structures, and the more he looked, the more certain he became. This was an impostor. Parker hounded the family and the FBI, who had initially accepted Bourdin's story. He was relentless. Finally, the pressure mounted, and a court ordered a DNA test. Bourdin knew the game was up. Before the results even came back, during an interview with officials, he cracked. He confessed everything. The entire unbelievable story came pouring out. The Nicholas Barkley case made Bourdin an international celebrity. But it was just one chapter in a very long book. After serving time in the US, he was deported back to France, where he simply picked up where he left off. He moved from country to country, slipping back into his old patterns. He'd pose as a teenager to enroll in schools, live in orphanages, and infiltrate foster homes. He was a phantom that authorities across Europe just couldn't pin down. Every time they thought they had him, he'd slip away and reappear somewhere else as someone else. Always a new story, a new face, a new life. It's easy to be baffled. How could one man fool so many people, so many times? How could a family not recognize their own son? But Bourdain's success wasn't just about his own skill. It was about his understanding of human nature. He preyed on hope, on grief, on the fundamental decency of people who want to help a child in need. But here's the most complex part of the story: the motive. Bourdain wasn't a typical con man. He rarely sought financial gain. He wasn't after fame, though he certainly found it. When asked why he did it, his answer was always the same. He said he was searching for love and acceptance. He was trying to fill the profound void left by his own childhood. Each new identity was a chance to have the family, the care, the belonging he never had. He wasn't trying to steal someone's life. He was trying to find one for himself. Of course, that doesn't excuse the immense pain he caused, especially to families like the Barclays. It leaves us with a deeply unsettling question. Was Frédéric Bourdain a cold, manipulative monster, or was he a lost boy, trapped in a lifelong desperate search for a home? The truth, like the man himself, is probably impossible to pin down.